safari trip in Egypt is not just about riding vehicles across the desert, but it's about visiting the oases of Egypt and getting to know their culture and traditions. There are similarities between the four main oases of Egypt, but only one stands out and differs from any other place in the Nile Valley. It's the unique oasis of Siwa. Siwa Oasis is that magical paradise in the desert that differs totally from any other place in the Nile Valley and is distinguished with its general image and architecture and houses and the features of its people and their costumes and their language and their lives in and out of their houses. Thus, the visitor of the oasis gets an immediate impression that he's no longer in the land of the Nile Valley, but he's in a place that differs from all what he has known in Egypt, either in the Delta, or in Upper Egypt, or in the desert. According to the ancient texts of Edfu Temple, Siwa Oasis was referred to as Penta or Tha. That was within a text that describes the arrival of delegations from the northern and southern oasis, presenting offerings and gifts to the pharaoh. During the Roman period, the oasis was called Ammonion, or the Oasis of Ammon. In Kitab al-Bildan, an Arabian historian called Al-Arabi al-Yaqubi referred to a barbarian tribe called Tiswa, and in the 11th century, the Arabian geographer Al-Idrisi mentioned in his book a small town called Centrea, with a Muslim priest or sheikh leading its people in prayers, and inhabited by a mix of barbarian tribe and Bedouins. Al-Maqrizi, who lived in the 15th century, called it in his book Al-Khattat one Centrea, and in another book the Far Oasis. As for Ibn Khaldun, who lived also in the 15th century, he mentioned Siwa under the name Tiswa, referring to the origin of its people, being a branch from Zenata tribe in North Africa. The information about the history of Siwa in the past is so little and covered with mysticism, but it's known that during the Old Kingdom, the land west to the Delta was inhabited by people called by the Egyptians El-Tahenu. Later on, their land was occupied by others called El-Tamahu. They inhabited the desert land of the west and often immigrated when water was scarce to Siwa or El-Bahariya or El-Farafra oasis, or advanced towards the sea coast. In Edfu Temple, there are special scenes that describe the struggle between god Horus, the god of good, and god Set, the god of evil. These scenes are described on that wall. Actually, it was a very big festival called the Festival of the Victory of Horus. Each king wanted to guarantee that he can bequest the throne to his son, just like Horus inherited the throne of gods, of the living gods, from his father, god Osiris. So a theater or a stage was set here in Edfu Temple, over which this play on the wall was really acted. So the scenes start actually from here, when god Jehuti or god Ibis read from a piece of paper. Now we are going to start the play of the struggle of Horus with his uncle god Set. And the story starts with god Horus standing on a boat sailing in the Nile, assisted with his mother, by his mother goddess Isis, and behind him is the Ptolemy king. And then the story is going to continue in that direction, with god Set here represented as a hippo under the bows and the arrows of god Horus. So the story actually continues in this direction. Theater has started in Egypt before it did in any other country or part of the world. It was set in the open court of temples, where as many audience as possible could come on special festivals and watch plays acted on stages that were built specially for each occasion. These plays told the mythologies of the past, for history was extremely important for the ancient Egyptians, and nothing could have been better than learning it through the art of acting in the most exciting way. The walls of Edfu Temple record part of the famous mythology of the struggle between God Horus and God Set, which is one of the most ancient and important religious mythologies the ancient Egyptian civilization ever knew, and that's clear by being referred to in literary and funerary sources across ages. This mythology is connected with the eternal struggle between good and evil, and it was also related to eternal and cosmic events with very old historical roots that were connected with the formation and legitimacy of royalty in ancient Egypt. It was connected to Osiris mythology, but it was more ancient, for it reflects a side of the political struggle or competition during the pre-dynastic era between the leaders of Lower Egypt, who were fighting under the protection of their god Horus, and the leaders of Upper Egypt, who were protected by their god Set, the lord of Nobit city in South Egypt.
Today, I'm walking amongst the ruins of Agormi, which was the capital of Siwa in the ancient times. It's basically composed of a huge rock that rises above the plain, where many palm trees used to grow, and there was a plenty of water. But in the Middle Ages, barbarians and Arabs invaded Agormi, and many inhabitants left. In 1926, heavy rain fell on the city, so most of these houses were ruined and destroyed, leaving just an empty space of debris. And that's why the rest of the inhabitants of Agormi left too. But today, the lanes and all these houses stand still as a witness for the antiquity of the city of Agormi.
The local history of Siwa is written in a book called The Manuscript of Siwa, and it's kept at one of the credible families of the Oasis. According to that book, the ancient city of Siwa existed during the Pharaonic and the Roman times around a huge rock that rises in the midst of the plain valley amongst the palm trees. The city, which was regarded as a capital city of the Oasis, is called Agormi. It seems that the locals gathered around the rock that contains the temple of Ammon, which is famous as the Oracle Temple. By the end of the Roman period in Egypt, the god's cult came to an end too, and his temples were abandoned. Being nomads, practicality posed itself on the life of the Syrians, and thus they used the temple and its settlements as a housing area. Moreover, they dismantled its rocks and cut it into small pieces, and with the help of their local strong mud, they built the new houses. A high wall was set at the foot of the rock surrounding Agormi's houses to protect them from their greatest fear, the barbarians. On top of the wall, there were small windows, each set composed of 3. They would allow the inhabitants of the city to monitor the activities and dangers happening outside. It wasn't long before the barbarians, who were Bedouin Arabian tribes passing through the desert, attacked them constantly. The ancient Egyptian year has comprised a big number of festivals and holidays, unlike the common impression that they concentrated on thoughts about death and the afterlife. Some of these festivals were connected to cultivation, including all its processes, like sowing and harvesting and the flood. Some others were connected to the king, including his coronation dates and the Jubilee festivals and his birthday. Other festivals were connected with the funerary life. Festival days were of great importance in ancient Egypt, for the Egyptians made them official holidays when workers didn't go to work. The proofs are found in the documents of Deir el-Medina and Palermo Stela, which mentioned feasts of gods and goddesses like Horus Feast and Sokor and Min and Anubis and Sishat. We've also found lists of festivals in the temples of Komombo, Edfu, Esna and Dandara. Celebrating these festivals is divided into many types, the first of which are the formal festivals. They are the New Year's Feast, the first of the month feast, half-month feast, beginning of the season feast, the flood feast, and the king's coronation. The local festivals that concern certain nomes or regions, like the birthday of local gods and the anniversaries and birthdays, were all considered private festivals, celebrated in their local areas. Being an agricultural country of the first grade, the Egyptians celebrated a big number of agricultural feasts, like the Nile festivals and the harvest festivals. These were celebrated in all of Egypt, and they included the festivals dedicated for goddess Renenwetet, the goddess of harvest, and God Min, the god of fertility. These were celebrated in the summer season or the season of harvest, in which Eastern exists.
In the Handcraft Center of Siwa Oasis, there are several workshops. One of these workshops is responsible for cutting the cloth or the material and sending it to the other section or other workshops for sewage. After it comes back from there and the piece of cloth is already like that, they take it and they use the sewing machine to compose something. For example, there is here a handbag, and that's after the finishing of sewing the handbag on these machines. So all these girls working here are Syrian girls, and they are trained to produce such beautiful handcrafts to be sold for the tourists who come to visit Siwa Oasis.
The motifs which decorated the traditional Syrian dress are not randomly chosen according to aesthetic reasons, but rather they are the figurative expression of ancient superstitions and local beliefs. Nowadays, these symbolic designs have lost their original sense, and their meanings have been gradually forgotten. Nevertheless, they are still jealously preserved, as they work as a visual sign of local identity. When asked, Syrian women cannot say why traditional designs must follow certain shapes and figures, but they simply affirm that this is the way they have been learned by their elders. The procedure itself of embroidering is also fixed, and it's based on specific stages which must be followed in order to end up with a dress which respects the local standards. Syrian women can be very critical towards the ones who do not follow the traditional patterns and procedures, because they demonstrate not to be professional needlewomen. First of all, the silk threads must be tint, because the colored silk purchased in the shops is not considered bright enough. The colors of the embroidery are a clear sign of recognition between the items for tourists and the traditional ones used by local women, because they are darker and are supposed not to lose the colors when washed. There are nowadays few women in Siwa specialized in tinting the silk, as it's a delicate procedure which requires skills and experience. The ancient Egyptian belief in resurrection and immortality after a short and temporary life and death is the utmost utmost proof of the passion of the Egyptian human of observation. For he had observed that the sun rises in the east and sets and rises again from the same position, and the moon shines and decreases and gets complete again. His occupation with his daily busy activities never turned his attention from studying the astronomical phenomena above him, like the movement of the sun in the sky during daytime and its disappearance at night, giving way to the moon, in addition to the sparkle of some stars. These observations were the nuclear base of the principles of a real science of astronomy. They made maps and lists where stars and planets were located. The practical purpose of that was to determine time and measure the age. The Egyptian ancient sources are incredibly full of many evidences proving the great knowledge of the Egyptians of astronomy and their ability to use this science in many aspects of their lives. The sun, being a celestial body, played a great role in their beliefs and in their practical life. The scientists of Ion City or Heliopolis invented the solar calendar and started using it in 2773 BC. They calculated the days of the year to be 365 days and divided them into 12 months. Each month was composed of 30 days. Then the last 5 days were festival days, celebrating the birth of Osiris family, who were 5 in number, a day for each member. Beyond doubt, the invention of the Egyptian to the sun calendar wasn't by any means an easy task. It required hectic observation, supported by a vast mental maturity.
A sheikh means a man of a high rank in the society, or a Muslim chief, or a leader of a tribe. In Oasis, there are 11 tribes. The sheikh of one of the tribes, his name is Omar el-Ragah, and he's the leader or the sheikh of the tribe of Awlad Musa, or the children of Moses. And we're hosting him tonight in Siwa Oasis. مساء الخير.
مساء الخير صديقي.
ازيك شيخ عمر؟
اهلا بيك يا فندم، اهلا بيك، منورين سيوة.
شكرا، الله يخليك. انا شايفه حضرتك قدمت لي القهوه.
نعم.
ده تقليد من تقاليد سيوة؟
نعم تقليد سيوة. نحن بناخذ القهوه مع اي ضيف بيجي، من كرم سيوة بيقدم القهوه قبل اي شيء.
شكرا.
العفو.
يا ريت حضرتك تكلمنا عن تاريخ سيوة، يعني تدينا فكرة بدأت ازاي تاريخ الواحة، اهاليها كانوا اصلهم منين؟
حضرتك المعروف عن سيوة انها مجتمع مزيج من البدو والامازيغ. البدو المجاورين للمنطقة والامازيغ اللي جم من شمال افريقيا على الحضارة الرومانية الموجودة في سيوة. ولما جم الامازيغ لقوا البدو بيجي بعد الحضارة الرومانية انه بياخد الثمار الموجودة في الزراعات اللي زرعوها الرومان من الزيتون او التمور الموجودة في الواحة. لما حصل جدب او جفاف في شمال افريقيا انتقلت قبائل بتشتغل في الرعي، بيسموا القبائل الشوية بقصد الرعي. وده بعد الفتوحات الإسلامية لما عرفوا من الحجيج اللي بيمر من الغرب إلى الشرق للكعبة بيمر على واحد سيوة بيعتبرها محطة للزاد عشان المية والعشب الموجود في الواحة. لما حصل الجفاف في شمال أفريقيا نصحوهم الحجيج إنهم ينتقلوا إلى واحد سيوة. ولما جم للواحة قولهم البدو اللي بيجي كل عام بياخد الثمار الموجودة في الواحة. فحصل حرب ما بين الأمازيغ والبدو. علشان كده الأمازيغ اللي تبقوا من الحرب دي بنوا قلعة تحميهم من الغزاة اللي هي قلعة شالي اللي موجودة في وسط الواحة. بنوها فوق سفح جبل علشان يشوفوا الغازي وهو جاي من بعيد، اعتبروا اللي بيجوا دول غزاة عليهم. وعملوا الشوارع أزقة علشان يخش عليهم الناس فرادى، ما يعرفوش يخشوا مجموعات.
وأي لغة كانوا بيتحدثوا؟
الأمازيغية. اللي هي مندرجة منها اللغة السيوية اللي احنا بنتحدثها دلوقتي.